name is Rebecca Thompson Hitt. I'm the founder and executive director of the Consciously Parenting Project, and this is the Consciously Parenting Podcast. And I am so excited to kick off our very first podcast with Pam Leo. And Pam Leo is the author of the book Connection Parenting. And if you've been hanging around at all, you've been seeing all kinds of things on my website about Connection Parenting. I make references to this book all the time. It has been such a life changer for so many families. And more recently, Pam is the founder of the Book Fairy Pantry Project in Maine. And we have been talking about this project. We're so excited at the potential of, just helping families, regardless of socioeconomic status, to have access to books, to have access to these ideas. So we're going to be talking about connecting through storytelling, through reading, and through singing today. So thank you so much for joining us, Pam.
I'm so happy to be here with you, Rebecca. This is going to be so much fun.
Yay! So let's jump in and let's talk a little bit about your project first, because I know you are so excited about this, and I would love families to hear about what you're doing in Maine.
Okay, thanks. Well, the Book Fairy Pantry Project is a project that accepts donations of new or gently used books, usually from book drives that schools do, and gets those books to the local food pantries so that all parents, regardless of their income, will have children's books in their home to read to children and for children to have, to own. And it is the most exciting project I think I've ever worked on. It will be coming up on a year that it kind of got started, and just good things just continue to happen of schools coming on board. And it really is about children helping children to end illiteracy by donating their outgrown or already read books to other children. The kind of impetus that made me do this was reading all of the statistics about literacy and illiteracy in our country, and I really was shocked to learn that 2/3 of the 15.5 million children living in poverty do not own one book. I totally could not even believe that.
Oh my gosh.
And so the more and more that I read about it, I just kept thinking, this is not acceptable. There has to be something we can do about this. And then a few days later, there was a commercial came on for a food drive for the food pantries. And all of a sudden it just clicked in my brain, wait a minute, the infrastructure is already there for distribution. If they had books as well, when parents came to get food, they could get books. And it just kind of launched forward from there. And I was telling you earlier, this project has had the support of 1,000 angels, because just people from everywhere have stepped forward to help financially, just in every possible way to make this project happen. So it is, I'm hoping, going to go statewide in Maine and then eventually nationwide. So I am very excited. And in this last year that I've been doing all of this, I myself have learned so much more than I ever knew about literacy, about how we connect with children through reading, through singing, through storytelling. And so that's what I'm anxious to share with you today.
Yeah, so let's talk a little bit about the research, because there's so much research that you've been sharing with me as this project has been evolving about, the impact that parents can have by talking, by reading, by singing with their children. So can you share a little bit about that? Because I think it's really important for parents to get that why. I mean, I read to my kids when they were little, but I didn't really get this why part.
Well, it's the same for me. I mean, I read to my daughters. I read and do read to my grandchildren, and because I love it and we loved it, and I always knew it was important, but again, I didn't really know the why either. And so some of the things that I've learned this year about why it is so important is that their brains are developing so fast, specifically from birth to 3, but, the first 5 years, before they ever even go to school, they're learning to read. And so, for parents who are in that position, that they have a newborn or they have a birth to 3-year-old child, excuse me, the more that we can talk to them, the more that we can sing to them, the more that we can read to them, the more words are, they're getting vocabulary, their brain is just growing and growing with every word we say to them. So for those parents, that's kind of what's important about this information. For parents who have older children, the really important part of all of this is that this is one of the best ways that we can connect with our children. And that connection with us is what they need most of all. So the reading to them, storytelling with them, singing with them is a way to do that.
Yeah, so the reading, the singing, the storytelling are all different ways of doing that. And I think that's something that we started talking about. I know we were talking a little bit about those parents who don't like reading their kids. And
it's true.
Yeah.
There are many parents that I have met and know that, I don't know, maybe didn't have great experiences when they were in school and learning to read, and never were allowed to have that joy of reading. And so for them, it's not really a joyful thing to think of reading to their children because of old associations and experiences. And it really can change. There are so many ways around that. Singing to children, they get vocabulary, they get connection. So if parents aren't really comfortable reading until they can get a little more comfortable reading, they could sing to them. And, if they pick short books, if they pick interactive books, and by that I mean, the flap books, the ones that you sit with a child and there are all these little flaps that children love to open. And so then the child is talking about the book. So it's not just endless reading. And there are books that are actually wordless books, like probably the most famous one are the Carl books, the dog Carl, where there's no words printed in the book, and you basically read the pictures. So the child and the parent or the caregiver look at each page and just talk about what's on the page. And so that's another way to have reading feel more comfortable and happy. And then there's yet another type of book that I personally love called rebus books, which are the books that in various places throughout the text, there'll be a picture that substitutes for a word. And so you'll be reading along, and when you come to the picture, you just stop, and the child soon catches on to how it works, that they say the name of that picture, and then they start to really love it. And the way most of them are constructed, each page there are more and more and more pictures for them to say. So interactive books can really be a great way around it if you're not, overly enthusiastic about reading aloud. But for parents who do enjoy it and who do love it, it's just such a great way to connect with children, because there's no way that you can share a story, whether it's a written story or a story that you tell about your own childhood, which they love to hear, or just a story that there's no way you can do that without really connecting with them. And that's really the important part, that we have these different ways to connect with children so that they feel our love, they feel our attention, and they know that they mean something to us, and we become really someone who means something to them. That's the important part.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I know, just thinking about my own experiences of reading to my kids, I was telling you before we started here that I read the entire Harry Potter series out loud twice to my kids. Most parents are like, what? But we loved it. And it just created so much opportunity for us to just be with each other. And we looked forward to that time. Whatever else craziness was going on in our lives, we had that time. And that tended to be the thing that, when things were feeling crazy, I would say, hey, do you want to sit and read? So we read a lot.
You saying that just made me think of a word that could be really appropriate to this, is that reading could be an oasis. In the stress of a busy day or, whatever, to just have this little oasis where you just cuddle up on the couch and have story time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sure.
We use that so much. That and in your book, Connection Parenting, you talk about the alpha brainwave state and knitting. And so that's the same time that I learned how to knit because I read about it in the book and I just thought, okay, I need another oasis. So that was one of the things I would do. And then I would alternate it with reading. So we all need those little oases as parents.
Absolutely. And for children to come to see that as an oasis just puts them that much closer to becoming a reader themselves and to becoming, someone who loves to read. And I mean, one of the really important things that I've learned is that if children are not reading on grade level by third grade, the chances of them graduating is so diminished because up until third grade, they are learning to read, but beyond that, they're reading to learn. And if they can't read to learn, it really stunts their ability to go forward.
Right.
So providing this reading and providing books in those early years will make such a difference. I mean, a lot of children, if they do arrive at school without any reading background for the first 5 years of their life, often need the program called Reading Recovery, where they work really hard with these children to get them, to fill in that gap. But that doesn't need to happen. There are so many gently used books in our culture. It means having there be even one child who doesn't own a book just is crazy because there's so many out there. It's just a matter of redistributing them. And with my Book Fairy Pantry Project, my daughter told me, Mom, you have to have metrics, which was a new word to me. And now I know what metrics are, and I'm focusing on it. So my most important metric for the project is the national statistic. The average child in a middle-income family owns approximately 13 books per child in the family. And if the food pantries were to give out books even one day a month, so if a child got a new book each month and then one on their birthday, in 1 year we could elevate children who currently own no books to the same book-owning status of middle-income children. That's a remarkable step forward in 1 year for any project. So that's our goal.
That's a great goal.
Yeah, we're excited about it.
Can you talk a little bit about the importance of just talking and singing and interacting and in early parenting, what impact that has? Can you talk about that?
Sure. Actually, it's one of my newest passions because I keep learning more about all of this. There are a number of programs happening in our country right now. One of them is out of Georgia, which is called Talk With Me Baby. Another is in Chicago, which is called 30 Million Word Gap. And one of the things they have discovered is that children from less vocabulary families, their children that are talked to less, are by age 3 have heard 30 million fewer words than children who are in families where they're talked to more. I mean, it is often associated with the socioeconomic status of the family, so often the lower the income of the family, the more that's true, but it's not always. There can be people in that circumstance who talk to their babies all the time, and so they don't have that gap. And there can be parents in higher income levels who just don't talk to their babies, so they do have that gap. But if we just talk to them, kind of just have a running narration of the day of like, good morning, and we're going to go change your diaper, and just basically narrate the day, sing to them, describe things to them. Every sound that happens, the doorbell, the dog barks, just talk about, someone's at the door. The dog is barking. Just talking to them just grows their brain. Because there are parts of their brain that by age 3, if they have not been lit up and connected, they get pruned because the brain decides, okay, these are no longer necessary. We just prune them. So, it's exciting to think that just by talking to babies that we can totally change their learning trajectory and totally change what their future might be like, regardless of their socioeconomic status. So to me, that is very, very exciting. And even with older children, once they're past 3, constantly sharing with them, talking with them, singing with them is going to increase their vocabulary, and it's going to increase our connection. Whenever we're engaged in a conversation with a child or singing with a child or reading with a child, they are feeling that connection. And that's probably more key to their future learning even than their brain development, that they feel connected to another human being.
Right. Absolutely. Right. I was thinking about the nonstop dialogue that I used to have with my kids. And, I used to think maybe part of it is I was home with especially my first one, I was home with him. And so there was nobody else to talk to. So I think for a while I thought, well, I'm just kind of doing this because I need to hear some,
keep myself company.
Exactly. But I realized, and he started talking really early, and it's probably because I just had that incessant dialogue going on. I didn't realize what I was doing. I didn't realize.
What a good thing you were doing.
I know. I had no idea. But, and I just think it's important because I know some parents get criticized for that dialogue. And, why are you talking to your baby? No, do it. Do it. There's a lot of good research about it. Do it.
And, that also, though, brings up an interesting thing just about people in general. I've read about this, I can't remember where, but that there are internal processors and there are external processors, meaning that, and I tend to be an internal processor. I can, think things through and decide what I'm going to do all inside my head and not even say anything about it. So I had to be really conscious to talk more to my children. Now, my daughter is an external processor, my younger daughter. That's how she thinks, is by speaking it. And so she just talked a lot, just naturally, she'd be like, okay, so I'm going to do this. And so instead of thinking it, she would say it. So, that talking to babies will probably come more naturally to the external processing parents of the world and be more something that internal processors like I am have to be just more mindful of, like, oh, say that out loud. Don't just think it, because they don't read our minds, but they need to hear, how our thinking processes work and how we reason this out. And especially that for older children is that speaking our thoughts is so important for them to see how we reason through situations.
I was teaching a class for parents of teens earlier this year, and that was actually one of the things that I said, even to parents of teenagers, is that we tend to think that they get all this. But, we need to narrate our thought processes. I'm getting ready to leave the house. These are the things I'm thinking about so that I'm ready to leave the house. And
it's a way of modeling functioning.
Right. And it's like we think, they get it. We don't need to say that out loud. Oh my gosh, they're 14. No, this is something that if we start when they're little and then we keep it up, it helps all across the board with, things like executive functioning when our kids are, getting older and they're more responsible for putting their own, lunch together or whatever.
Getting themselves out the door.
Yeah, exactly. So that they're thinking through that. So that process is all part of what you're talking about with reading, with storytelling, with singing, is that connection. And then it's also growing their brains.
Absolutely. And, one of the things that I also talk about in Connection Parenting is that it's as if the day we were born, someone hit record, and we record everything we hear. And then when we become adults and have children of our own, it's as if someone hits play and everything we heard comes on back out, whether it's things we want or not, and often not. But the same thing with that processing, if we are talking about something, like, okay, I need to go to town today, so I should return the library books, I should, and do that out loud. The children are recording that. So then when they're in that position of, oh, I have to go to town today, oh, I should probably, that recording is in their head. They have that language. I was just recently listening to an audiobook, which is one of my favorite things to do when I'm driving. And I was listening to a book called My Reading Life by Pat Conroy. And I am a new major fan of Pat Conroy. He wrote The Prince of Tides and The Water is Wide, both of which I have not yet read, but will be soon. Anyway, one of the things he was saying that as a writer, because his mom read to him so much that as a writer, he hears his mom's voice in his head when he puts the pen to paper.
Wow.
And I just was like, wow. In fact, he tells this great story about how he was an Army brat, and so they were, I think in his 12 years of school, they were in 13 different bases, and that his mom always got the prize at every library of every base they were on of having taken out the most books from the library, because she had 7 children and was allowed to take out 5 books per child. And she just, that was weekly. Weekly, you went and got a new batch of books. So it was really a delightful story to listen to, and I've probably listened to it about 5 times since I got it and just never tire of it.
Wow.
But yeah, that voice is so important. We want to instill that voice in our children's heads.
We want that one in their head.
That one. Yes. The good one.
Yes. So I'm talking with Pam Leo. I'm Rebecca Thompson Hitt, and we are talking about connecting through storytelling, reading, and singing. We'll be back with Pam Leo next week to talk more about the ages and stages and what this actually looks like day to day as you connect with your kids and your family. Join us next week for podcast number 2. For more information, please visit the Consciously Parenting website, consciouslyparenting.com.